I was an extremely quiet child. I was a child that in a room like this would never have put my hand up and spoken to somebody like me. I was a child that was always doodling and drawing in my notebooks. And sometimes at school I used to get told off for doodling. I'm guessing there might be some doodlers and daydreamers here. If you are a doodler and daydreamer, keep hold of that, because that is the thing that might just turn you into an artist one day, or the person that is brave enough to pursue your dreams. This is a big claim. How listening to what children need to thrive, or young people need to thrive, could save humanity. It's a really, really big claim, and I'm going to take you on a journey that has brought me to this position, in this moment, in the world as it is, that you're growing up in. I'm speaking to you as a writer, I'm speaking to you as a mother of now grown-up children, and I'm speaking to you as a human rights activist. I never would have dreamt, when I was that shy person sitting in school, not really speaking, I never would have dreamt I would be standing on the stage talking to young people on a TED talk. The child in me is still very present, and that is something that I think young people don't realise about childhood. And I think it's because childhood from 0 to 18 in this country, in some countries it's slightly different. I think it's because we don't value in the world today actually what it is to be in your stage of life. People used to ask me when I was your age, what are you going to be when you grow up? And still, a bit of me just gets really angry at that idea, because I think, I am something. I used to think, I am something now. I'm somebody that wants to express themselves. I am somebody with ideas. I'm somebody that listens to the radio, that hears things about what leaders are saying in the world today, that I feel very strongly about. I am somebody right now in this moment. So I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey of what brought me to this confidence to stand up here and talk. And I think you can probably see I am still a little bit nervous, but one finds a way as an adult to build strategies, to learn how to overcome difficulty. And I'm going to share with you some of the moments that have mattered in my life, that have brought me to this point, and also a project that I have recently completed with Amnesty International, and a book that is about to come out with Chris Riddell, the illustrator, that's a wonderful illustrator that some of you might know. And it has been a listening to 600 young people of your age throughout Europe, in Britain through my work, in Poland, in Berlin, and in Malta. And we have listened to the voices of displaced children who have been walking this world unaccompanied. And we've been listening deep as writers and artists and trying to understand what it is like for these young people to grow up in the world today. And as a result of that, I have written an extended poem, if you like, a free verse poem, which Chris Riddell has illustrated. It's not for sale. Leaders of the world might actually understand something if they realise that not everything is for sale. The purpose of the work that Chris Riddell and myself and psychologists and academics and artists and writers from all over Europe have been doing is to attend to the moment that you are growing up in now in the world. And to understand, for children and young adults to understand, that there are some adults that actually do understand what it is like to be living, for example, in Poland, so close to where war is at your door. That there are some adults that actually want to take the time to listen deep to your concerns about the environment, about migration, about racism, about what your future might hold if in a world which is riven with inequality. And here we have this beautiful palette, and a quote by the American author Willa Cather. Most of the main basic materials a writer works with is acquired before the age of 15. I really believe that, because as part of my work in community, I also work with elders. And what I know is, with people with dementia, is that they can forget what they had for breakfast, but they can remember what it was like to experience partition when they were a child. You know, a moment where their world was riven apart and they had to literally move from their home to another place because of what was happening politically. And they are there in that moment when they are telling you that story of when they were your age and they were experiencing that. I'm sharing with you this palette because it belonged to my mother-in-law Rosie, and my first novel, when I actually finally plucked up the courage to be a writer, I wrote when I was walking outside of there's a big London secondary school that my children go to, and I was walking along the pavement with my mother-in-law, who was tiny. She sort of came up to my shoulder, and it was right at the end of her life. She had a wonderful, wonderful life. She was an artist, she was an activist, she was somebody that really stood up for what she believed in. She was tiny and walking along the road, and the kids were coming out of the school doing what I call taking up the pavement. You know, the pavement's narrow, they were kind of in their own world, and by absolute mistake they knocked her to the ground. And this shy Sita that had stayed there since kind of year 7 and year 8 at school, this voice came out of me and I went, "Why? Come back! You've just knocked my mother-in-law over." And of course they were amazing, as young people are amazing. It's just your spatial awareness isn't quite built in yet at teenage age. They came along, they helped her up the pavement, and they said, "We're really sorry, we didn't see you." And I remember she was such an amazing person. She chatted to them about what they were interested in, what they liked, what their holidays, what they were doing for the holidays, because it was just about to be the summer holidays. And we went into my home, and she said goodbye to them. And they were literally standing on our doorstep going, you know, "We want to talk to this older lady because she's like really interesting." And I went into our kitchen. I gave her a cup of tea, and I don't know if your elders are like this, but she wanted a cup and saucer, a china cup and saucer. And I remember her hand shaking, and she said, "Do you know, Sita, when I was young," and she was very good looking when she was young, she was like, before people used to take photographs on all the kind of different social media platforms, so, you know, photographers used to come and take photographs of me because they thought I was kind of good looking. She said, in those days, people used to pay me attention, and I didn't really have that many great stories to tell. I hadn't had that much life experience. But she said, now that I am old, I am completely invisible to young people. And something in me changed in that moment, and moments that matter. This was a moment where something rose up in me, that sort of shy young person sort of started to come, even though I was nearly 40 years old, he started to come out of me, and I just felt this kind of sense that I need to express something about what matters in the world, about the people who matter in the world, the ordinary parents and grandparents and ancestors whose stories are not told in literature, in films, your family stories, your ancestry that you don't see. And I started writing, and she was very poorly, she was in a hospice. And I said, I would really like to write a story inspired by an amazing ordinary grandmother and her amazing ordinary grandchildren. And she said, "Come on then, you've been doodling away at these notebooks for God knows how long. I've seen you've got about 50 or 60 notebooks. Get on with it." And I was able to share with her the first chapters of my first story, of finding my voice. And finding your voice happens in many moments in your life, and I think everybody will be able to think of a moment where you felt just a little bit more courageous. Maybe somebody has helped you feel like that. Maybe it was an unexpected thing. The palette is here, the textured palette is here, because I'm not someone that goes around fighting with people. But if anyone tried to take this away from me, I would really kind of tussle with them. Because this palette contains most of the paintings that she did in her whole life. One of the problems, I think, with how we explore childhood through education and through parenting is that we think of it as a process to adulthood. But it's every single time you try to express yourself, every time you've tried to do a piece of art, to write a poem, to do a science experiment, to do something, and you thought, "Oh, I thought that was going to be really good," but actually, it's not good anymore. Every time, and you've thrown it away, every time you try to express yourself in your life is part of the palette of who you are and building that voice. And so this palette is a textured palette, and it's a palette that actually leans in to the moments in childhood. And this is what I write about in my stories. I'm just introducing you to a moment when I was a child that somebody has done a beautiful listening to. By the river in the Lake District where I grew up with my father. Sometimes I think we underestimate what young people see in the adult world. And I think I understood a lot of the things that my father was going through when he was a doctor in the National Health Service, trying to find his practice when he was a child. I understood the othering of people because in those days where we lived in the Lake District, it wasn't a place where there was great diversity. And I wanted to find a place to write about that and express that, to place that on my palette of creativity. And so finding a voice has always been a really central part of my work. I went into a school library, which was in a school which was just opposite Grenfell Tower, where the atrocity of that fire still impacts on that community. And in that school library, they've got these amazing young people. Of course, these amazing young people, guess what? Young people grow up into adults. These amazing young people have grown up into adults. But when they were your age, they were already saying the things that mattered to them. They were already saying the climate clock is ticking. We haven't got time. They were already saying girls need an education too. They were already talking about inequality. And they were already trying to speak to power and say, this is how we want the world to change. So very recently, I've been part of this big project, a 3-year project in Europe that I mentioned to you. And I'm going to share with you some of the words that the young people throughout Europe have been saying about living through life today. So in this talk, I've been exploring what life would be like if we actually listened to you. What leadership would be like if we actually listened to you. What the world would look like in the future if we listened to you, not tomorrow when you become whatever you dream to be, but right now. And here are some of the things that I have kind of collected and honed and distilled into a poem that Chris Riddell has illustrated. Here are voices. This is the world we see, we hear, that needs to change. Together, we hold the power to plant freedom. Together, we hold the power to make change. Give us space and time enough to dream, to live in peace, in homes and schools, where kindness is the key. Open doors to safety, delicious smells and tastes of opportunity. Growing up, we open our ears and eyes to the world's reality. What if leaders hear truth-telling from the mouths of us young? It's time to stand up for what we need to survive and to thrive. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Time to think outside the box. We gather to state our urgent need to live in a caring web where adults speak truth, not lies. Plant love, not war. Give, don't take. Own up to their mistakes. We dare to dream of a peaceful globe where healing nature, awe and wonder start to win out over war and hunger. Down to the river of rights we go, the river that flows through you and me, the river that carries the hopes and dreams of you, over a quarter of humanity.